people are waking up to the fact that enterprise generative AI is so much harder than they thought it would be. It took them 10 days to translate all of the content and do the website launch, something that would have probably taken like 3 or 4 months pre-AI. First and foremost, you got to bring the people along for the journey. Like, you have to answer the questions like out the gate. What is this going to mean for my job future forward? Like, why would anyone want to help you implement a new way of working if they think they're going to be replaced?
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the AI Founders Podcast. My name is Jay. I'm your co-host. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of an AI product studio called Casper Studios. Today, we had the pleasure to be able to speak with Matt Sobel. Matt is a partnerships leader at Writer. Writer is one of the top generative AI companies out in the market today. They've been doing amazing work over the past 3 to 4 years, specifically integrating AI into the enterprise. And so this conversation was spent talking about Matt's reflections about how that's actually happening, some of the early case studies of Writer being able to be successfully integrated into the enterprise. We ended up at the end speaking a little bit about just the social and economic consequences of integrating into the workforce. It was a really fun conversation. I apologize that both of our mics were not working that well. And so this is the most crisp that you'll hear. Over the course of the episode, we both ended up accidentally plugging into our AirPods. And regardless, it's a fun conversation. Matt will be on many times in the future as well. So excited for you to listen to this episode. Matt, how are you, man?
Living the dream, Jay.
I was trying to figure out a way to start the podcast. I thought a good way to do it would just be like introducing how we actually met each other. We were at dinner on Friday. Our partners were also there, and they were making fun of us because we ended up meeting each other on a online platform called LinkedIn. And we are this is the first epitome of internet friends that I think I'm leaning into with Matt, which has been pretty cool. A cold DM about 1.5 years later has led to a couple dinners, coffees, hangouts, and I think we're good buddies now. So I'm excited to bring that arc of internet friends into a more deeper conversation here too, Matt.
Oh my gosh. It feels like we may as well have met on Bumble or something. This is, you're like quickly rising the ranks, and my partner too loves yours. So we're now besties.
I love it. Matt, you have a very specific insight, probably a handful, I'd say even the top 100, 200 people in the world that probably have a better insight in terms of specifically how AI is being implemented in the enterprise. It's because of your interest. It's also because of your experience working with Writer, one of the top generative AI companies that exists today. And given your role there as one of the partnership leaders, I think you have a really interesting perspective on that. So maybe one way to start this is just better understanding what is something that you're seeing today that is counterintuitive in how enterprises are integrating AI that people aren't really understanding today.
Yeah, it's a good place to start. I think everyone is in a similar spot. Maybe a bit of background too, like Writer, we're a generative AI platform built solely for the enterprise. We've been around for over 4 years now, way before generative AI was sexy and cool. So we have like years of experience helping these large enterprises operationalize AI. And what's fascinating to me is that people are waking up to the fact that enterprise generative AI is so much harder than they thought it would be. And the reality of the situation is it's really easy to go from a really cool POC to something that works like 80% of the time. But the last mile of AI still is like by far the hardest part. We've seen companies come to us, like Fortune 500s come to us and say, hey, we've been working on this problem for 6 months and we can only get it 80% of the way there. And the next 6 months are spent just getting like 1 to 2% improvements in accuracy for what they're trying to do. And that's the hard part. That's like the thing that no one's able to truly figure out, at least from what I'm seeing from my vantage point, is how do you get like the quality you need to scale?
I'm really curious about that last mile problem that you're seeing. One thing that you reminded me of was how Writer and even some of the early application layer, and I think Writer is a lot more than just that, but how a company actually ended up being super successful right at the early stages of this new generative AI boom. While I was at LinkedIn, I was studying the landscape, and I remember looking at a company like Jasper, for example, and I think Writer followed a similar kind of strategy, which was you all were doing something great before when GPT-3 came on the market and everybody started freaking out about ChatGPT. And I think there's an insight there in terms of not only are you trying to get ahead of a trend, but you're trying to actually build the infrastructure beforehand. So then when the scaffolding is in place, when you have the new models that start coming out, for you to plug in that and then can take that super fast and just be there ready to go. I feel like Ryder was able to accomplish that. Would love to hear your reflections on how that happened, if you think that is what happened, or how you
Yeah.
all think about that internally.
Yeah, it's there's so many ways to address that. And thanks, by the way. I too feel like really fortunate to be at Writer, not only because we have AI researchers who are like helping progress the field, right? I think like something that's really unique about Writer is we're building our own LLMs from scratch, right? And that in itself offers our team learnings and points of view that other companies don't have when you're just wrapping your software around someone else's tech. So I think if you think about the name Writer, the first thing you probably think of is, oh, they're a marketing company or something. And what's really unique about it is back in 2020, when the founders of the company, their names are May and Wasim, they're still our CTO and CEO today. When they founded Writer, they were sitting in a room. They have this huge background in machine translations. So they were already trying to solve machine translation using transformers, which is like the foundation of LLMs today. It's like the technology we know. And in 2020, they said, wow, these transformers are going to be able to do so much more than just translate from English to Bengali or something. And they founded Writer because they said at some point very soon, if not today, AI is going to be better at reading and writing than humans. And they called it Writer. And there you have it. But now, fast forward to 2024, we're still called Writer, but it's not because we already know AI is at least faster and better at reading and writing content than a human. In fact, like if you can write something now, you can build it. And like the layer of abstraction for building technology and writing software is now natural language. And so we still think of ourselves as Writer because we now have hundreds, thousands of business users in the Writer platform, like building workflows that are AI first for their companies. Bringing it all back, like the AI kind of like hype that we're in is really hard to sift through, but Writer has this unique vantage point because we've been building what we call like the dominant design for AI in the enterprise. I'll tell you more about it too, if you're interested.
Yeah, let's get into it. It's almost like now the brand of Writer is writing the future in some way, not just writing content. You can share that idea internally in the future, however you want to write it.
Yeah.
So what was who was the first enterprise to actually start using Writer? It just feels like, it feels like such a pain to be able to get that first customer to be able to work with, and then be able to provide a lot of value to them, and then be able to continue to provide a lot of value to them, and then be able to use that case study to go get a bunch of other enterprises on board as well. Who was the first company that said, we're going to do this Gen AI thing, we're going to partner with this startup to be able to work with that? Have you heard through the grapevine in that world?
Oh, I have a great story for this. I fortunately joined when we were a Series A back a year and a half ago, and the company has quadrupled since in size and revenue and all that fun stuff. But I was early enough to hear the stories, like what was happening before. It's almost like pre-chat GPT and post, and what happened to Writer before and after. So this is a great one. So the VP of digital at Adore.me, which is part of Victoria's Secret, it's like a $500 million brand in the company. This guy, Ranjan, is super smart and just like tech savvy and interested in the cutting edge. And he was working with our founding team in 2022. And he was like all of these crazy ideas to his leadership team at VS. And he was like, guys, I think we can use AI to write all of the product descriptions on our website. And this was like March of 22. And they were like, what are you talking about? It doesn't know what we sound like. It's going to be really generic. AI isn't good at writing content yet. No one's even heard of GPT-2. And even if you had, it wasn't very good at these things. But Writer and our team was already working on our first LLM integrations with our platform. So we were like, Ranjan, yes, this is a great use case for Writer and for AI more broadly. So they took 6,000 product descriptions. They said, hey, here are the human written descriptions. Here are the AI generated descriptions. We're going to do all of them. And then there's like a human plus AI element. And they ran like this like short pilot. It was like three months long. All of this again before ChatGPT even existed. This is like March of that year. And the copywriters, the people who are like spending the arduous hours of their week, like writing product descriptions, hated doing it. It was like super boring, laborious work. And then B, like it really, they weren't very good at it. There was like all of these varying levels of consistency, like whether or not, like probably Jay, if you were writing a PDP for Valentine's Day and it was Friday and you were like, I don't want to do this anymore, that was going to be lower quality than maybe some of the other people on your team. So what they found was that not only was the AI better at writing the descriptions, and like it was a 99% improvement in efficiency. It wasn't just the cost savings, but like the humans who were actually like saying, yeah, this looks good, started to love what they were doing because they were spending more of their time like being strategic and saying, oh, we can actually make this campaign super thoughtful. And what else can we use this AI for? So that was really cool. And then the byproduct of actually them implementing these PDP pages, the model is trained on their best performing content. So they saw like a 24% improvement in click-through rate and like a 40% improvement in inorganic search. And it's because turns out SEO is a algorithm, right, that Google's powering, and the model is just more effective at embedding SEO content into the PDPs. That's a long-winded way of saying Victoria's Secret was probably one of the first customers that we had that did it. And they're still like deeply embedded into our ecosystem. In fact, they still love to test some of the newer things. And one of the teams at VS just launched their website into Mexico. It took them 10 days to translate all of the content and do the website launch. Something that would have probably taken like 3 or 4 months pre-AI.
What is the disconnect that you're seeing from stories like that? And then what seems like September 2024, the mainstream vibe that a lot of investment into AI hasn't actually started to generate the right results. I see both of those worlds happening at the same time, which I think the energy I want to bring also throughout this podcast is that there is nuance. There is a world where actually there's over-invented AI and it isn't seeing the best results. But then I'm hearing these stories. That's the first customer you've had. We haven't even gone into some of the other case studies you've had. There's clearly business impact that's being driven by AI for these customers. How do you reconcile those two different, narratives? And what like A, what is it? How are you reflecting on that? And then B, how do we end up closing that gap in some sense?
It's a really good point. And I don't think I believe that all of the investment in AI is like leading to fruitful outcomes. I think like the generative AI surge in 2023 was like a ton of optimism. Work was going to be reinvented. Like people were going to focus only on higher value tasks. Businesses were going to be 10x more efficient. All of the capital that was allocated was going to get companies to like this Valhalla. But then you fast forward to this year and we hear completely the opposite narrative. The initial excitement is now like, it's led to all of this disillusionment. The challenges of scaling AI are like super apparent. We talked about this earlier, but not only is it hard to scale in terms of quality, so if you can get the applications to actually be accurate and intelligent enough to work, that's like the first hurdle. But then there's like all of these challenges in like adoption, like getting the people who are actually going to be using it to want to use it, for it to be the right interface. And then there's even more beyond that, like compliance and risk. Like you have people who are going to have to change the way they work and they see that as a risk to their livelihood. And like all of these different components are like blocking what is to be like true like efficiency gains. And it's like any other software, there's like going to be issues in scaling it. So I think like the truth is, I think you and I both know AI is going to completely reinvent the way we work at some point. But there are so many other things that have to happen in order for that to be successful. And a lot of enterprises are mistaken when they think about how easy that's going to be and what's going to be required to get them there.
And what are those parts that are harder than people imagine? And how are you helping them get there?
Yeah, I think there's like on the quality side, it's like integrating LLMs with the right microservices, like getting the right system for RAG implemented. What that means is like connecting your LLMs to databases in a secure way that's accurate and cost effective, getting the right guardrails in place, like the ability for users to like easily maintain and update applications over time, like continuous data management, that all of those things are like built into the tech, and that's on the tech side. I truthfully think like organizations aren't focusing enough on the people side of things, which is like the process, how, I guess, like maybe to bring it to a real customer example, what Victoria's Secret did so well, and the reason why their organization, specifically within Adore Me, is so successful with AI is they've re-architected their teams to operate differently. And it's not like their engineering teams are operating in a vacuum, building applications and then shipping them to the business users. It's completely different. There are business users that are working hand in hand with we call them AI coordinators. And these are people that are like deeply understanding the workflows that someone goes through, doing the prompt engineering. Like you're building software in a completely new way. And the companies that haven't restructured their teams for that are not seeing the benefits of AI because it just is different than what they've seen in the past.
Oh, that's super interesting. There's a whole part of this podcast I want to get into, like different business ideas you may be having now that you're in the industry, like helping companies think about this stuff. It feels
Yep.
like one of the pieces that just is right under our nose is helping employees to use AI better. And just even before they start interacting with the applications that writers integrating into their workflows, it's just how do you use this to be able to edit your email properly? How do you draft up like a proposal from this, and then be able to then get into how do you use applications like Writer, and then it's what are the right kind of steps now to change your own workflow internally to interact with these new technologies. That's hard. I don't even know where to start with that kind of stuff. It feels, especially for a larger enterprise, feels like such a pain in the butt to be able to like change how a business operates properly. So what do you mean by that? What does it mean to change the way a team operates now using AI? What tactically are companies doing to help with this?
Yeah. First and foremost, you got to bring the people along for the journey. Like you have to answer the questions like out the gate. What is this going to mean for my job future forward? Like, why would anyone want to help you implement a new way of working if they think they're going to be replaced? So there's this huge element of bringing the people along for the journey, like helping them write the way the platform and the applications will work and what they see as like the hard parts of their job, like helping them automate those parts first, right? One of the things that Writer does really well, the reason why we have 250 plus enterprise clients and like growing, is we're really good. Like our sales team, our CS team, we're so good at building this champion network within the organizations we work with. So if I had to give advice to a founder who's building an AI company, I would say like when you find a customer who is leaned in and like you get past the compliance gates and like the CIO trusts you for whatever reason, the way to win is to find the AI champions. We call them AI program leaders. There's like people within the organizations we work with, like Salesforce is a customer of Writer. We found this woman who's amazing. Her name is Anne Maria. And she's like going in and saying, I'm raising my hand. I want to be the one that's like shepherding this journey for our company or my team, maybe in a smaller silo. You find those people and then they're the ones that like have to get all of the other people on board. And that's the only way we're successful. You have to find these champions within the organization.
So interesting. I think this is an underspoken part of the current narrative of how to be able to integrate AI successfully into the economy. And I don't think people are really thinking about this properly because the technology is for the most part already there. Yes, there's important product development, there's improvements on the model layer, but there's already so much that you could just do right now. Then it's how do you actually bring this into the enterprise once it's there? How do you make sure they don't churn? And some of the insights that you're talking about, which I love, is like one, really bring the employee base along. Two, address the parts that they're really nervous about, likely including what will this mean for my job? And then maybe you ask them, what are the pieces that are the most annoying for you day to day? And how do we actually think about a way to integrate AI to help you with that? So then it puts away the insecurity around this is going to impact my job to, oh my God, I could actually really use this to improve my job in some way and improve my life in some way. I don't have to go spend all that time now editing that stupid document. I could do it already. And then once you have that, you have people that are so fired up, you just bring them along and help them be champions for you for integrating AI across the rest of the workforce. And because for them, I met a lot of these folks. I was trying to be one myself at LinkedIn, which was if you're working at a bigger company, you want to be, and you're driven, you're ambitious, you want to be closer to the new technology as much as you can. And that helps your career, right? You get promoted off of that. You get bonuses off of that. And it's just frankly really fun. Any success I've had at LinkedIn is because I was just annoying and wanting to learn about new technology. And I think that helped to like start the company later on too. And so how do you dispel any concerns for those people first, and then identify the champions and then help them get promoted? And that's a classic enterprise sales cycle.
It's like
But
the
yeah,
playbook for most SaaS companies, right?
yeah, but I don't know, it just feels so much more impactful this time around. And it feels there's one thing of being able to buy new software, like an HRS system that's going to improve just like how you manage and attract employees. But it's different if you can actually lead to like 10%, 20%, 30% like productivity gains. Like that is actually going to really impact your career, impact the company.
Yeah. Oh man, a couple of notes on that. I think in addition to the how are our roles going to be impacted, finding these champions, you have to answer things like, why are we doing this in the first place? What skills do we need to adopt? Like really when I say bring people along, like really telling them like, hey, here are the tools you should be like using, and here are the things, like that's all super important. What's fascinating, I think to your point, what makes AI so different than other software and like technologies that have been adopted, especially at the enterprise level, is for the first time ever, we were just talking to a CIO about this. He said that he's been in the role for 25 years, and usually he has to take software like an HRS system or like a new CRM and push it down into the people and force people to adopt it. For the first time ever, the CIO said, bottoms up, people are asking for this technology because they know that they'll be able to do their jobs more efficiently. And that's like a fundamental shift. There's probably a lot to unpack there, but like for the first time ever, the CIO is being asked to accelerate the adoption of new technology in the company and to force people to log in and use new systems, which is amazing. I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to capitalize on that.
I love it. I love it. I hope you guys have a playbook or something how to be able to do this. I'm sure you do. But I don't know, maybe nerding out about different business ideas. That for me feels pretty not easy picking, but just help companies that already are thinking about using AI to be able to actually use it properly. There's only so much that like a writer or an OpenAI or a Microsoft or like these larger scale kind of Salesforce, like larger scale like adoptions in the enterprise, like they also need people to come and like help with like learning and development of some sense. What kind of other ideas do you have for the audience in terms of things that you've been seeing that are, I don't know, like AI enabled that could be started, or just like small ideas? Like it just doesn't have to be like building the next like unicorn, but what are you noticing in terms of interesting business ideas?
Yeah, maybe on that thread, you're right. Jay, look at Accenture's last earnings. Like they're making billions of dollars off of this wave, and like Ryder's not grossing $1 billion yet. How is that happening? Like to our point earlier, there is all of these services that need to be wrapped around like the adoption of AI. And that's a brilliant business idea for anybody who like actually understands the technology and then also understands like how to adopt software effectively. I think like the hardest part for companies right now, back to our earlier point around like this massive investment in AI isn't going anywhere. Every single employee who's like driving adoption of AI is being asked like, what is the ROI on this? Measuring the return on generative AI is like the hardest part. And it's not just cost savings or cost avoidance. It's also like, how do we measure like in dollars and cents what it means if we can get something to market faster, or if we can innovate more quickly, or what if our marketing is X% better? Like these are the things that these day-to-day users are not equipped to like measure effectively. And then that's the reason why everyone's nothing's coming out in the bottom line. There probably is meaningful results. No one knows how do you measure it?
Yeah, because the people that are using it are likely more junior level employees or mid-level employees that don't have to necessarily report out on earnings or report out on revenue growth. And it's like giving them some level of coaching or understanding of this is how, as a CTO or a CRO, is how I end up measuring success myself in the business, right? Here's my core metrics. Help me manager level at a big company who's just addicted to using AI technology and super loud about how to implement it everywhere. Here's how you should frame up your narrative. Here's the 3 core metrics I track. It's one is like how much time it takes to close a deal. 2 is like how many of our customers are like being retained and how much are we growing them. Here's the thing. Can you try to make sure you can share this narrative in that way? And then like, how do you share this across different types of industries and roles? How would you tackle that? Would it be something like that or something different?
No, like you're spot on. I actually started to do something myself, and maybe, I don't know, we'll start a wave here today on this podcast. I feel like I don't know what I spend my time doing still sometimes. And in order for you to like reinvent anything or to measure ROI on anything, you need to know what like the current state is. And not enough people know. So what I'm actively doing day to day now is saying, okay, I just spent 2 hours putting together this deck or 30 minutes writing this new email about a launch that we're coming out with about this new product announcement. Write down what you're doing. And then when it comes to reinventing that workflow with AI, you'll have the first part of that ROI like package. And like the current state assessment is not new or groundbreaking, but it's something that I guarantee you is going to be the most valuable part of the services that you can provide.
Oh, that's an easy idea for, I love that. That's an easy idea for all of the productivity tools that exist today to just embed into their product in some way. If Outlook, I'm surprised Outlook doesn't have some integration already, or maybe they do. I haven't updated it with some models in the background because I spend a lot of time updating emails using AI. So Outlook, if they had bet, yeah, first they could just tell me before 2020, November 2022, and after, like how much time am I spending drafting and sending an email? I don't know. That's hard data to track fully, but in Slack, you could do something like that too. Google Doc could do something like that a little bit too. It's hard to track that across different platforms, but if you're selling into an enterprise and you're having a hard time understanding the ROI, then yeah, that's an interesting way to do it. It's monitor your own. There's probably tools that you can monitor your own kind of work today already automatically versus you having to like, oh, I spent 2.5 hours on a deck. Who wants to like, you're the Uber productivity nerd, so maybe, but if there's an automatic way to do that, and then later you just start experimenting with AI, it just shows you I saved % of my time that rolled out across like 100 employees, like equals like this much time saved.
And let's say it's something that takes you like 10 minutes and you get it down to 7, you still might not like, that might not be the prioritized use case for you, like 30% improvement, but you're like, oh, but this thing that takes me 2 hours, but 10% improvement is actually like more valuable. And like that is also like this prioritization exercise that you can only do when you truthfully know what your day-to-day looks like. And I'm not an expert by any means, but I'm trying.
So much fun. Matt, what else do you want to talk about?
There's so much. I want to just talk to you forever, Jay. Yeah, actually, I'm curious to see, like, from your POV, I feel like you have access to this really unique cohort of people that are like dying to implement, dying to be on the cutting edge and to try new things. What are some of the things that you see are like genuinely working for your customers?
Yeah, it's fascinating how different the problem statements are when you're working with early stage companies and larger companies. Some of them are similar, but some of them are just like all the stuff that we're talking about, for example. I think we could build that muscle ourselves to help our clients, but because they're so early stage, they don't, and maybe they're already sold on the fact that they want to be able to use this stuff. I haven't had that conversation with them necessarily. Maybe that's on me. Maybe I should be having that conversation with them more. And maybe as we go more up market, that'll be like, you've taught me maybe how to be able to frame that narrative for them better. For at our stage, I've been seeing use cases across maybe 3 buckets of, I don't know how to frame it, how to use AI. 1 is conversational, 2 is analysis, and 3 is, what was the third? Oh, like generation, right? So conversational, generation, and analysis. Some products might have a little bit of everything in there, and some products might actually just focus on one of them. And I think a lot of people end up talking about the generation of something, but a lot of interesting use cases are just done in terms of analysis of something. One of our clients publicly, it's a company called ScriptRank. The founder had built a successful book publishing business before and is still working on it, and wanted to reinvest the profits to be able to start to focus on some of the problems that his authors face. One of those problems was helping to get a report back and feedback on a manuscript, like 100+ page manuscript. Wow. And so over the past year, we've been working on that with Andrew and the team there. And it's been so interesting, like learning how do you get a report back from just like no humans involved, just the product, and we're using Claude in the background to be able to get an analysis or report back. In that generative AI use case, there was no generation technically. There was generation of the analysis, but they're not going to use that output to be able to share it like outside. You're going to be able to, you know what I mean? Some products, even like our Chrome extension, is more conversational and generation, where you summarize a piece of content, you're chatting with it a little bit, you're like, I can then share it, I can generate that. So there's maybe even a little bit of analysis, a little bit of generation, a little bit of conversation. I don't know if that's the right framing of it, but I think there's a lot of opportunity still in the analysis piece of just going to every single, maybe pick an industry, pick a type of company, pick a size of company, pick a role, and say, well, what is something that you do today to analyze like a bunch of different pieces of data, and then how can I help you do that? That feels like under. But yeah, do you notice something similar in terms of the different types of use cases? Would you frame it in those three different buckets, or would there be a different one?
Yeah. Analyze, like transform, generate. I think those are like the core buckets and of capabilities, at least today, that generative AI really can do well. I will say, to your point, the analysis bucket being undersold is 100 the reality that we see too. And it's because think about what you spend your time doing. Does it, like, there was a great use case. I was working with we have a couple law firms that we work with, and they thought that it was taking them a long time to write contracts. And they wanted to use Writer's full stack platform to write compliant contracts and then be able to send them to their clients more efficiently. But in fact, the time that it took them to write the actual contract was really minimal. It was the analysis of the other contracts that exist within the client's like folder that was taking the time. So like they weren't really pointing their effort at the right part of the problem. And I think to your point around businesses and where people should explore, if you're trying to solve problems for companies using AI, it's you have to like really understand the workflow from soup to nuts, understand what is happening, and then where can AI best affect that process. And like the analysis component is always the part of the process that people undervalue.
So I was just talking to my teammate about this. I'll leave you with this banger. Curious to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, totally.
I think that analysis piece and trying to share more of that with folks does end up getting to a place where I personally am just a little bit nervous about, because I think it'll impact my ability to think through complex problems properly. Just like Google Maps beforehand, or like the phone book on your iPhone, where I don't know how to get from my place to your place, even though it's 30 seconds away. I don't know what your phone number is because I just outsource that. I think that's been spoken about before in the previous wave of technology. Our brain doesn't now remember those pieces. The thing that I'm nervous about is as we keep offloading the analysis to AI, what is remaining in our brain to be able to think about these problems properly. And the hard part is, and we do this as well because we're helping customers with maybe more strategy consulting and this type of work. In reality, in the short term, that ends up like offloading a part of the analysis ends up benefiting you greatly. You save time, you can get information faster, you can look through different contracts faster, synthesize things, and you can probably generate a lot of revenue because of it, or at least reduce your costs and increase your profit. But I think if you do that too much over the medium to long term, you may lose your own ability to think about problems properly. And then you just get so close. You end up just becoming like AI doesn't take over it. You just end up becoming it because you're offloading so much of your brain to it.
Yeah.
I told you I'd leave you with that banger, but I've been reflecting on it. I'm a little bit nervous about it. How would you think about that?
Oh, it's such a good like thought experiment. Here's how I interpret that. And I think we'll have to save it for episode 2. If you want the long-winded response, my initial gut reaction is that as models get better at reasoning, we will want to outsource the analysis tasks that aren't strategic and like worth our time. Like when we're having our models are reviewing like claims from a healthcare company's perspective, like that is an analysis that a human can do better than a robot. There are genuine decisions that need to be made based off of criteria. And that's analysis that I would want to outsource it to AI. I think to your point, like when it comes to making strategy decisions, do you want to let the model decide where you take the company based off of what like maybe if you think the model and if you think the AI is better than what you have the capability of doing, I would say I don't think that's where we're headed. I think you'll just actually be able to do more analysis because you're not spending as much time looking at these data points, but you're actually going to be able to look at this. And the humans who are making those strategic decisions will still be in charge, I hope. But that's maybe my POV. I'm not sure. It's a good point. We
can spend the whole episode talking about that. And let's do it the next time. Matt, we're almost on time. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you? What else do you have for the audience before we wrap up?
Nothing else for the audience. I can't express how grateful I am for you having me on, Jay. Love following your content. Everyone follow Jay. Don't follow me. But if you need to find me for whatever reason, I'm on LinkedIn posting a lot of posts and just sharing my POV on the world of AI. Jay, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.